All right. How have you guys been? Been a couple of weeks since we saw each other. You doing all right? Did you miss me?
Yeah.
Don't everybody speak at once. It's not very nice. All right, I missed you, kind of. Did you guys get some things done? How you doing with your projects? Well, no kind of real enthusiasm here. What's going on? Did you guys not drink coffee this afternoon? What's the matter? How are you doing? Did you find some places? Start working on it? Not everybody. Not yet? All right. Well, if you need my help, let me know. You look like an aviator, like back in World War II or something with those headsets on, man. You're zeroing in. All right, well, look, I want this to be this shouldn't be a struggle to do this project. This should be a really effective learning exercise. So if it's becoming frustrating, let me know, and let's figure out a solution to that. Yes, ma'am. Our first solution.
Well, we had something interesting happen. I contacted Hotel Grand Duca and
Yeah, all right.
someone, and then they got back to me and said after speaking to the legal department, they did not want to participate.
Yeah, that happens from time to time. I probably should have mentioned that. Not every hotel welcomes this. The hotels that typically operate with really high standards, not to say that the Grand Duca doesn't, perhaps it's just a bad week for their corporate counsel, but typically those folks are just absolutely okay because they think you'll come in and do a pre-inspection for them and, you know, kind of a preventive inspection, and they'll do that. Did you find another place to go?
We're going to decide on one tonight.
Okay. All right, good. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that can happen from time to time. We also had an interesting situation with a restaurant, I think, right?
Yeah.
We did. They wanted you guys to sign a non-disclosure and confidentiality. I felt like it was too. I think we're better off going someplace else. And the biggest reason I don't want you guys to get caught, you know, violating some sort of non-disclosure agreement, that's just, at this stage of you don't need that.
So should we like mention, if we are going to go to a restaurant, should we go and mention that we're doing that? Or
We're thinking
we
just maybe to go and
It's a
measure.
fair question. You know, if you can kind of just start and just go, I'm not so sure that that's not, let me just put it this way. That's certainly one way to get it accomplished. I certainly think teams in the past have gotten it accomplished that way.
Okay.
Yeah,
So there is nothing illegal in that?
nothing illegal about that. It's a place of public accommodation, right? So if they come out and say, what? Because here's what they're afraid of. They're afraid that you're trying to find a violation to sue them over.
No, I'm going to say, I want
I-
to make sure that I can bring my grandma.
Exactly. Yeah. I need this 1-inch ramp to be another inch high so my grandmother can get here. Yeah. But you know, if you just kind of, you guys will figure it out. You're grad students, you can handle this. Yeah. But look, if it really gets to be frustrating or challenging, don't wait too long. Call me, send me a note, and I will find a place for you to go. Does that work? All right. I don't want this to be a challenge for you. All right. Everybody found the forms, though, that I wanted you to use. Okay, and you understand the assignment, and it's one summary per group, not per group member, right? So, trying to make this as efficient as possible as well. I know you guys have other things to do. I'm interested in you writing, but I'm just as interested in you learning about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And look, for those of you from international countries and backgrounds, it's just a matter of time before rights for the disabled become ubiquitous, become spread throughout the world. Because people are realizing more and more in countries that currently don't support access for people with disabilities that they're missing out, because people with disabilities travel a lot, and they travel even more if the countries had removed the barriers to access. Yeah? So I think it's just a matter of time. So I want everybody to work through this and see how important this legislation is, and hopeful at the same time to develop empathy for people with disabilities. You know, we're very fortunate in this room. Most people are. You know, if we can get up in the morning and walk, talk, and breathe, we're having a darn good day. But not everybody has that. And so this law was passed under the first Bush president, George Bush's father, the senior, his presidency. His wife was very supportive for people with disabilities, as were the Kennedy family as well before them. So it took that long, though, between the Kennedy administration and the first Bush administration to get it passed. And it's been in place now for 17 years, as you saw if you looked at the law at all. It was first passed in 1990, went into effect in 1992, maybe a couple of years off there. So they gave them a grace period, you know, to get everything right. But you'll find today that not all restaurants or hotels are in compliance. And they still get sued, and it still costs them a lot of money. They're getting better, but people still resist. I do a lot of work with country clubs, and one of the things that happened 5 or 6 years ago is the Department of Justice, which enforces Title III of the Americans with Disabilities Act. They changed the law, the legislature, to insist that every place of public accommodation, hotel, public club, etc., has a pool lift. Right? Does everybody know what a lift is for a pool? It enables somebody that can't walk or that uses a wheelchair or that's otherwise disabled to lower themselves into the pool. Well, a lot of hotels resisted this, a lot of country clubs resisted this, but this is a piece of equipment that costs about $3,000. Now, maybe 4 or 5. Granted, does it get used often? What's the answer to that? No. But as I said to these folks, I said, do we do fire drills every month at a hotel? Do we ever have to actually do it? 1 out of 100,000 hotels might ever actually have a fire, right? So we do things all the time that aren't used very often, yeah? And this is for a good cause, right? I mean, think about it. Most of the people, when this law went into effect, we were trying to accommodate lots of people. But many of those people were veterans that had just come back from the Iraq and Afghanistan war and had lost a limb. Right? But people weren't thinking like that. So when I said to the country club managers, I said, how many of you would, if you knew that the person that was going to use that lift had lost their leg fighting in the war in Iraq or Afghanistan, how many of you would pay for the lift yourself? And they all raised their hand. Right? Because what was happening was we were getting these boards of directors that had zero empathy for people with disabilities. And they wouldn't spend $3,000 to $5,000 on this lift. And they said, well, we can't afford it. And I would say that's because these country clubs get a $100,000 initiation fee. And they got 500 members paying $900 a month. And I said, you can afford it. And they're like, yeah, we really can. And I said, yeah. So go home and put in the lift. And now you'll find most clubs have lifts. Jessica, did you get all that? Because I know you're really in tune with what you got there on your screen. But are you doing okay? Okay, good. So close that up for me, okay? Yeah, you guys close your laptops. Now, what I asked you guys to do for today, all right, so that's enough on the projects, safety, security. You guys got those going on. You've got your timeline set out. You'll have those videos to me timely, right? All right. The next piece of logistics is, I mentioned to you a wine tasting. We're actually, I was having the holdup was I was having some work done at my house, and unfortunately, they just can't promise me that it's going to be finished in time to hold the event at my house. But I got permission from the dean to go ahead and host the wine tasting. We're going to do it in here. It'll be fun. It won't be as much fun, but I promise you it'll be fun. And we'll have Chris Taylor. You guys know Chris, Dr. Taylor? He's going to come in and do the tasting. We'll taste 3 wines, a red, a white, and a sparkling. And if I can sneak it in, if you guys don't tell anybody, then we'll try to bring some food in with us. Because the school doesn't allow typically food in the classrooms, although you guys bring it in all the time, right? But for me to do it, it's a little awkward. But I'll see what I can do, because it's nicer to have the wine with a little food. You compliment it, right? So, yeah, or we can bring some stuff. We can do some things. So we'll work it out so that you're not missing out. And we'll plan on, so on that class day, it probably says on the schedule, Professor Barr's house, strike that, or we'll update the schedule, but we will be in this classroom on that day. It's in April. All right, so we have plenty of time, but that's it. How many of you enjoy wine? How many of you don't like it? How many of you have never tried it? Everybody's tried wine? Okay. Just out of curiosity, how many of you like beer? How many of you hate beer? How many of you like cocktails, whiskey, gin, vodka? Oh, man, we got some hardcore folks in here, don't we? Where do you guys drink? We shouldn't have this. We should have this conversation when we talk about food and beverage. We'll do it then. I'll save that for then. All right, so tonight we're scheduled to go over chapter 5, which is a continuation of a discussion about contracts. You guys remember? I know it's been 2 weeks, but do you remember our conversation about contracts? Well, we're going to review for just a moment, but tonight we're going to talk about 3 different contracts. So we're going to really focus on one: franchise contracts, management agreements, and meeting contracts. We're going to spend most of our time on meeting contracts, only because if you look at a meeting contract, most of the clauses there you will also find in the other 2 contracts, except for 4 or 5. Yeah? It's not always the same, vice versa. So I want to make sure you get exposed to all the major clauses that a contract can have. We mentioned several of them in the chapter, right? But that's going to be our plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about franchise agreements, a little bit about management contracts. Then we're going to do an exercise around the meeting contract that I posted on Blackboard. You found it, right? You read it? Word for word? Yeah. Who fell asleep? Yes. Sydney, that's what you have to look forward to. Actually, many of you do. Many of you have that to look forward to if you get into the business. All right. By the way, I don't know where you guys are in your school career, but I have a very close friend who runs the hospitality vertical for Alvarez and Marsal. It's a consulting group. Did you guys see the post that Don sent out? Everybody get that? Okay, there's a very cool opportunity out there for somebody. Don't know where you are in your curriculum, but if you're close to graduating or in the last semester or so, and you fit that profile, I would encourage you to look at that carefully. We've sent 4 or 5 of our grad students and 1 undergrad to them, and they've done very, very well. Pays well, you learn a lot. It's an exceptional group to work for. So anyway, just want to make sure everybody was aware of that opportunity. Plus, they're going to hire 2 people, and they want to hire 1 from us and 1 from FIU or Cornell. And I'm trying to get them to hire both from us. So I want you guys to, because we've had this pipeline for a while, I want to keep it going. All right. Now, I looked at the post that you guys made. I was really happy to see that perhaps our ethics discussion came through a little bit. I think most everybody decided it would not be appropriate to give the points to the individual, right? But what you have to... Somebody coming in? Oh, all right. Well, invite them in. This is hospitality. Go get them. Look, you have to realize that people will ask that. They're going to ask for it personally all the time. And you run the risk of them retaliating. That's a very real life example. These people will say, well, you're not going to give it to me personally, then we're going to go someplace else that will. And you've just got to recognize that that's part of doing business. And you've got to decide if you're going to live up by your own standards or you're going to live by their standards. And that's up to you. I can't sit here and tell you which way you're going to go. I can tell you that the ethical thing would be to not award the points to them personally. It would be to give the points to them. It would be to give them, to provide, as many of you suggested, to give the points to the business. Yeah? But, look, here's a question. How many of you have worked for a company before that you traveled for? And did you work for a company you traveled? And did you get to keep your frequent stay points? Did you get to keep your frequent flyer miles? You did. There's only one company, a major company that I know of, that doesn't do that, and that's Target. If you travel for Target, all of the hotel free nights and points and all of the airline points come back to Target. And then they use them as part of their travel program or part of their incentive program or bonus program or rewards program for their employees. Yeah? Personally, I think that's best, right? Because why should only the people that travel get the benefit of what the company is paying for? It's my perspective. How do you guys see it? You're the ones traveling, so you want the done. You guys are like, no, I want that Hilton vacation.
I think there's a fair argument for both.
You can't say that. You can't just say, well, on the one hand, but on the other hand. That sounds too much like a lawyer. That's how lawyers get paid.
So, I mean, when I'm traveling, I stayed at another Marriott, so, you know, they paid for it, they made the arrangements, and then I used my corporate card or my P card, so I wasn't really paying for anything, and then all the points were tied back to them.
To them. So because they gave you that card. They gave you a travel card and you use that. Yeah. A lot of businesses, you travel on your own card, you get reimbursed, right? And you get the points. Or even if they do pay for it, you get the points sometimes. So it's an interesting dilemma. Many of you are going to be faced with it. You're going to own businesses. You're going to have to decide how you're going to handle that. And you're going to have to decide what's the appropriate thing to do if somebody hits you up personally for points. So that's why we put it in there, because it happens a lot. And there's a lot of fraud in those points programs as well that you guys need to be aware of. A lot of people commit fraud. A lot of people give points fraudulently to their friends, or they hack the program and they assign points, right? And so there's a lot of diligence and kind of cyber sleuthing forensic science that has to go on to keep that stuff from happening. So just be on the lookout for that. All right, let's talk, just recap real quickly, an enforceable contract. We identified 4 primary elements of an enforceable contract. Do you remember, Sonny? Do you remember what we started with? It's all right if you don't. You just happen to be right there and smiling and you're Sonny, and so I thought I'll call on you. A little bit of a hint, absolutely, I'll give you a hint. So we need to have an agreement first. Yeah. And to get an agreement, we have to have an offer and an acceptance. And what else do we have to have? Because that might be an agreement, but is that enforceable? Consideration. And what is consideration? Everybody put your name tags out, will you? What is consideration? Exactly. Perfect word. Value. Can a promise, Sydney, be consideration? Yes. A promise to do something or a promise not to do something. Do you remember we talked about that? Yeah. So a promise to do something, a promise not to do something is valuable, right? So there has to be, it has to be mutual consideration. In other words, I just can't promise to do something to Sonny. Let's say, Sonny, I'm going to give you 3 hotel rooms on Friday night. Sonny says, great, I'll be there. And then Sonny doesn't show up. Can I sue Sonny for the price of the hotel rooms or for not showing up? Or can I collect? Can I enforce the agreement against her? Probably not. If Sonny comes and shows up and I don't give her the hotel rooms, can she insist on getting the rooms? What's the consideration going? What's the consideration going to me? There's not any, right? She just said, "Oh, I'll take it." So really, that's what's known as a gift, right? And gifts aren't necessarily enforceable, right? They're just agreements. It has to have the 4 components to be enforceable. That's the key difference. Sonny, again, we got to have what? We got to have an offer and an acceptance, which is an agreement, right? Okay, look, 3 different ways to say an agreement. 1 is an agreement. 2 is an offer and an acceptance, right? An acceptance that mirrors the offer. And the 3rd term we use is a meeting of the minds. All right. So if Laura says to me, you can have 3 hotel rooms on Friday night for $150 each. And I say, that's great. I'll take those rooms as long as one of them is a suite. Do we have an agreement? What do we have? counter offer. So she says, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And I say, oh, you know what, that's okay. I'll take the 3 rooms at $150. Is Laura's offer still on the table? No, she has to re-up the offer. What's on the table is my counter offer, right? So once the counter offer is made, the offer no longer is valid. Do you see? And it gets a little more complex than that, but for our purposes, I just want you to understand that that's how that works. So, okay, so now we're back to an agreement with consideration, mutual value flowing between both parties of the contract. Yeah. What else do we have to have? It has to be legal, for a legal purpose. Is renting hotel rooms, if I'm over a certain age, not going to do anything illegal, I'm not going to do prostitution or gambling or whatever. It's there for a legal purpose, right? No problem there. And do Sonny and I have the capacity to contract? Well, Sonny does. I'm not sure if I do. All right. Right? Do you guys recall that conversation? Yes. All right, good. And then the other thing we talked about last time was we talked a little bit about the remedies. Do you remember? We talked about damages, didn't we? And we talked about specific performance. Did we talk about that?
Yes.
I think we did. You remember if I wanted that particular, so I booked my wedding at your hotel and I wanted that particular bridal suite, and we show up and you're like, well, I'm sorry, we rented it to somebody else. And I'm like, no, dude, this is what I want, right? Or more often it happens this way. You call me up 2 months before I'm supposed to go and you say, hey, I'm sorry, but we've decided to renovate the hotel and that bridal suite's no longer going to be available. And I go down and hire a lawyer and I immediately file for an injunctive relief, which means I want the court to order them to do something. And as a judge, ask them to delay the renovation until after my wedding, because they promised that I could have this bridal suite. And their hotel's going to argue, but we have this other suite, or we have another hotel where you can stay at. And the judge will go, Mr. Barth, why isn't that satisfactory? And I would say, Judge, it's not satisfactory because this is where my spouse-to-be, fell in love or whatever, and that, and this has exceptional memories for her, and there's no other place in the world, and she was counting on this, right? So certain things like that, courts are relatively sympathetic to, and they'll typically order specific performance. If it's within, if it's going to cost them $5 million, probably not. But they might offer some damages then, and they'll have to sweeten the pot to get them to change their mind. But sometimes there's not enough money to get people to change their mind, and that's why specific performance is there. All right. So that's contracts. You get it? Contracts. That's it. Now you've taken a whole semester of contract law in law school. Pretty close, Sid? Not too bad. All right, now we're going to move into these 3 specific contracts. Now, in the book, we devote 2 chapters to contracts because we think it's really important. The only other subject we devote 2 chapters to is labor and employment. These are the 2 most pervasive areas that I think students need to be familiar with when they go out and get into the real world, whether it's in hospitality or any other world. Labor and employment issues are going to be a challenge for you, and contracts are going to be a challenge. Yeah? We also talked about Uniform Commercial Code in here, didn't we? Last week? Yeah, we covered all that. All right, sorry. It's been 2 weeks. Now, franchising. Did you get a chance to look at the book and look at the information about franchise contracts? Say yes. Everybody did? Because I'm going to move quickly through this because there's not a lot I can add to what's in the book. What I want you to understand about franchising agreements is this. Number 1, they're almost like securities. In other words, they are regulated heavily by each state. And there are lots of laws and regulations regarding what a franchisor has to disclose to a potential franchisee. That's known as your offering circular. You saw that, right? So the types of things they're looking for is, Jessica, did you miss the conversation where we're not going to use our electronics in here? Yeah, okay, let's close that up. And if you need something to take notes on? You got a pen? All right, great. So you guys, you need to recognize that if you're going to be on the franchisor, strike that. Who's the franchisor? The brand, the licensor. Franchisor is also known as the licensor. I am going to license Irina to open a hotel in Southwest Houston, right? And I'm going to give her, allow her to use, I'm not giving her anything. I'm going to allow her to use my name, use my central reservation system, plans, training procedures and materials, right? Ongoing training, participate in my marketing. Pretty much the value proposition of a franchise. And for that, she's going to pay me an upfront franchise fee of $10,000 a key. What does that mean? $10,000 a key. To enter, yeah, a key, but we use that term to describe the number of rooms in a hotel. If there's 100 keys at a hotel, it's 100 rooms. If there's 250 keys, 250 rooms, right? So we typically, the business industry typically describes it as $10,000 per key, or $40,000 a key. Or it depends. If you're at a Ritz-Carlton, it could be as high as $100,000 a key, up front. It's a lot of dough. Per room.
So there are 500 rooms.
Yeah, that's why you don't see many Ritz-Carltons at 500
But
rooms.
it's not a monthly fee, right?
It's what?
It's not a monthly.
No. That's a one-time upfront fee to purchase the license. Then, and it's for a certain number of years. And then you pay an ongoing royalty for every guest that stays, a little more if a guest comes through the central reservation system, and you also contribute to their marketing program. Yeah. But a lot of people think it's worth it. And I just made 100,000 up. It may be, I'm not sure what it is, but there's some out there that are that high. Yeah, it's expensive. But if you're going to put, that's not including the land, that's not including the building, that's just the money that goes to the Four Seasons or to the Ritz-Carlton for their reputation, brand, experience. Yeah, so it's good to be the franchisor. Yeah, good to be that. If you want to do something, start Hilton. Yeah. So that's the franchisor. Who's the franchisee? The buyer or the licensee, right? And remember, we talked about this. We talked about all the different components in the hotel infrastructure today. Do you remember? We talked about the brand, the franchisor, Marriott, Hilton, Choice, Wyndham, Intercontinental, whatever it is. That's the brand. They're also known as the franchisor. They're also known as the flag, the sign that's on the building. But if I buy a franchise from Wyndham, Wyndham has about 23 different brands. So the flag is probably not going to be Wyndham, it's probably going to be one of their other brands, Econo Lodge, right? Or it's one of the brands that I buy. That's their flag. But I buy the franchise agreement from Wyndham itself because they own the brand. Does everybody see that? All right, so I'm the owner of the franchise. So I negotiate and buy the franchise, the license, but I don't know anything about running a hotel. So Rachel, what do I do? Yeah. So I'm the owner because I got the money. So I go to the Four Seasons and I say, hey, I want to put in a Four Seasons hotel, right? So Four Seasons in that equation is going to be the brand and the franchisor, right? Licensor. They're licensing me to use their brand and all the other things we talked about. I'm the owner. I pay them the money. I buy the land. I put up the building. But I don't know how to run a hotel. What am I going to do? I'm going to get somebody to run it. What do we call those people? Third-party management company, right? Now, before the ink is dry on the franchise agreement, the Four Seasons is going to say, by the way, we manage hotels too. And for this, for the next 10 years, we're happy to manage this hotel for you. And oftentimes, the brand will end up managing the hotel. But not always. There are lots of other hotel management companies that will manage your hotel for you. And many of them are what we call preferred management companies for the brand. So like Marriott might have 25 preferred management companies that manage 15, 20, 25 of their hotels already. So they would say to me, hey, if you're going to buy one of our properties, here's a list of hotel management companies that have experience with our POS systems. What's a POS system? Point of sale. What's a PMS system? Property management system. We use POS systems, cash registers, right? The point of sale is a cash register. We use those throughout hotels, restaurants, but your property management system is what's at the front desk that tracks all of your reservations, your check-ins, your check-outs. Many of them will clock in your employees and clock them out, just like your POS systems will do today, right? Track your maintenance, track your housekeeping. They're very sophisticated today. But that's important. So they say these preferred businesses, they have experience with our systems. They know our central reservation systems. They know our standards. So we would encourage you to choose one of those. But you don't have to, but we would encourage you to, right? Third-party management. Now, there's one other piece of the puzzle that's been happening in the last 10 years. Do you recall what that is? There's those three, but there's a fourth one that's kind of putting their nose under the tent.
Oh, asset management.
Asset managers. So if I'm the owner and Four Seasons sells me the franchise, and I hire, and this happens, let's say I hire the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Management Company to manage my Four Seasons. That happens, because maybe Ritz-Carlton gave me a better deal than the Four Seasons Management Company, right? But I've never worked with the Ritz-Carlton Management Company before. So I don't have a relationship with them. And I've invested $100 million in this hotel. Bless you. Am I just going to take the Ritz-Carlton Management Company's word for what's going on at the hotel? I'm going to hire another, what we call management company, to oversee and audit the work of the Ritz-Carlton Management Company. That's called an asset management group. They represent the owners, and they go in and look at budgets, hiring, what's the management company doing? Are they squeezing every bit of ROI, return on investment, out of that hotel that can possibly be squeezed? So those are your four primary players in the hotel infrastructure today. Everybody got that? Now let's step back for just a minute before we come back to franchising, just so everybody understands where these hotel management companies came from. Back in the early 80s, I guess before most of you were born. When were you guys born? 90s? Oh my goodness. All right, enough of that. Do you guys know who Led Zeppelin is? Does everybody know who Led Zeppelin is? Do you guys know who Led Zeppelin? It's a rock band in the United States. You don't know? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay if you don't know. It's a very popular rock band. I just want to give you a little education so you understand what happened. So I was in class, in my intro class, a year ago. And I play music in that class before we get started to get everybody in the right frame of mind, right? So I play my playlist, and I happen to be playing Led Zeppelin. And a girl was sitting on the front row, and she was kind of, giving it this. And I thought, oh, you recognize this music. You know Led Zeppelin. She goes, oh, yeah. I said, your parents turn you on to that? She goes, no, my grandparents did. She got an F in the class. No, she didn't. I'll explain it to you later. I'll play the music. All right. Back in the early 80s, well, you guys remember 2008. What happened in the United States in 2008, actually across the world? Right? The recession. Okay, well, back in early 80s, we had another recession. This was a savings and loan crash. So we never learn from our mistakes. So back in the 80s, a lot of savings and loans, we had savings and loans back then. Now today, banks can also lend money on mortgages and commercial. Before, though, you had to go to a savings and loan to borrow money to buy a house. Right? But what was happening was the savings and loan industry got in cahoots. Sorry, my new phone just starts playing music every now and then. The savings and loan companies, businesses got in cahoots with appraisers and realtors. and they started churning sales. So you'd buy a house today for $100,000, or back then, and then you would get an appraiser to come and appraise it the next week for $140,000, and you'd go to a savings and loan and borrow 90% of that, and you'd kick back some of that money to the appraiser and to the savings and loan in forms of points and fees. And then 6 months later, another appraiser would appraise it at $180,000. You see how this worked? And they just kept doing it, driving up the price. And ultimately, whoever got stuck with the house last was stuck, right? And you think, well, how does that happen? But if it's happening like 1,000 houses in a city at a time, what's going to happen to the overall price of housing in that city? It's going to go up, and much larger scale than that. And so that's what was happening. So you had, but they weren't just loaning money on houses. They were also loaning money on hotels. And they were doing the same thing with hotels. So all of a sudden, then, it's like a scheme, right? And finally it stopped. And the market, the value stopped going up because everybody realized this is crazy, right? So they couldn't sell them. Well, the people that owned them, they couldn't make enough money to pay the banks, the savings and loans back, right? So the savings and loans did what? Well, yeah, they foreclosed, but then what happened to the savings and loans themselves? They hit bottom. They couldn't, pay all their money back, right? Because they had borrowed heavily to do these loans. And so the guarantee, the FSLIC, Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation, ended up taking over the savings and loans. But when they took over the savings and loans, what did they also take over? The hotels that the savings and loans had foreclosed upon, right? Well, and that's the government. Does the government know how to run hotels? No. And you never want to just let a hotel, have you ever watched a house sit vacant? What happens to it? It deteriorates badly, right? So hotels do the same thing. So they wanted the hotels to operate, but they didn't know how to operate them. So who did they hire to operate them? Well, they hired the people that used to own them that got foreclosed on by the savings and loans. They said, hey, you know the hotel, you can't buy it back, but we'll pay you to manage it. And the people that had the hotel foreclosed are like, sure. And that's how third-party management companies got started. And that's what happened. It was just that cycle that went on. And it just happened again in 2008. A lot of hotels got foreclosed upon, and all those hoteliers that lost their hotels formed management companies. Because look, oftentimes those hoteliers, it wasn't their management that cost them the hotel. It was construction. It was the price of oil. It was whatever it was not necessarily the way they managed the hotel, right? So they're good managers, and they went out and started managing hotels. So you had this extraordinary surge in hotel management companies that started back in the 80s, grew dramatically from 2008 on. And so now we have like 500 or 700 hotel management companies in the U.S., whereas before we probably had 25. It's just remarkable. And now every brand wants to manage hotels too because they realize it's lucrative as well. So look, I just want to give you that historical perspective on how they came about, but it's a great business. And many of you, you may end up, it's not just going to work for Marriott today. It's not just going to work for the Four Seasons Ritz-Carlton. It's going to work for White Lodging. It's going to work for Marcus Hotels. They might own 100 hotels, they might operate 100 hotels. So there's huge growth opportunity for you within that management company. Yeah? And a lot more so today with the management companies than with the brands, because the brands are consolidating, buying each other up, and they're laying people off rather than hiring people. You guys see that? You get it? Trying to help you out with a career kind of concept here. All right. I don't charge extra for that kind of stuff, but I just throw it out there. All right. So back to now. All right. So let's circle back now to franchise agreements. As I mentioned to you, I don't have a lot to add from the book, but a couple of things I want you to know. Number one is they are heavily regulated. And they're heavily regulated because we learned from experience that a lot of fraud was occurring with franchise agreements. I would go to Amy and I would say, Amy, I've got this cool restaurant concept. You give me $25,000. I'm going to give you plans. I'm going to help support you, da-da-da-da-da. Amy says, great. She writes me a check for $25,000. She calls the main office number 20, 30 times. Nobody ever shows up. Nobody answers. Amy finds out that I've done that to 20 other people, and I really don't have a restaurant concept. Right? That happens. It's just like the timeshare business back in the day. Do you remember? You guys probably don't remember. Hell, what am I thinking about? You guys do know there was a time before cell phones, right? There was a time, you guys remember all that? Anyway. Timeshare is the same way. They drag you in off the beach. They go, here, check this video out. We're going to give you 2 free nights and all the rum you can drink. And we're not going to let you leave until you pay us 10 grand. But for that 10 grand, and they showed a beautiful building, rendering, a picture of what it was going to look like. It was beautiful. And we've already sold 70 of them. And oh, you're going to be the 71st person. And there's only 80, so you got to buy now. And $10,000 is going to get you a week stay for the next 25 years because they're going to go up to $25,000 next week. You got to buy. They still do that. But it's a little different now. But they still do that. And then they never build the building. Right? And so now the timeshare industry is heavily regulated. Right? The same kind of thing. So franchising is heavily regulated. You have to disclose, have you been in litigation before? You have to disclose earnings per location. How many stores are actually operated by the franchisor themselves? One of the largest restaurant franchisors is Subway. And how many corporate stores did they have? I think 1. That's what we call success. I don't know how many stores they have, but it's a bunch. And it's been crazy successful. So it doesn't have to be big and glamorous, right? To make dough. There's lots of money at pizza delivery things. Lots of stuff out there. So you have to disclose those types, and we list several of them for you in the disclosure and when we talk about that. But here's the most important thing I want you to understand about a franchise agreement. If you are on the franchisee side, you need to realize that today, rarely, if ever, will a reputable franchisor that has people waiting in line to buy their franchises with their proven concept like McDonald's, Wendy's, IHG Hotels, Hilton, it's rare that they will negotiate at all their franchise agreements. So there's not a lot of reason to really understand it now, because you're going to have to read it when they hand it to you, and you're going to have to recognize that you're just going to have to accept it or go do business someplace else. And that's kind of where they're at. They've become so successful, so many people that want it and are willing to sign just as it is. They're saying, take it or leave it. Whereas 20 years ago, you could negotiate a lot. Now, some things you can negotiate, like the length of the agreement, yeah, a few things like that, but rarely anything else. Yeah?
Are there any other parts of the hospitality industry that you think have the potential to benefit from management contracts?
Oh, you mean like food and beverage, for instance?
Sure, like food and beverage.
Yeah. Actually, look, I'm a big believer that hotels should hire a third-party food and beverage company to manage it. Just because you know how to operate a hotel does not mean you know how to operate food and beverage, right? And there are those companies out there. The group, have you heard of the restaurant China Grill? Asia to Cuba, China Grill. Have you ever been to Mandalay Bay out in Vegas? No. Well, anyway, China Grill was a very popular restaurant along with Asia to Cuba, and this company owned those two concepts, but then they also operated the food and beverage for Morgan Hotel Group and for Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. And they did their nightclubs and they did their food and beverage. So that type of thing is happening more and more, just because hotels realize that they cannot sustain an effective food and beverage operation because they just don't understand it very well. But you're also seeing more and more hotels, instead of doing that, they're getting rid of room service, right? Because they just don't, it's not popular enough to sustain, and they can't charge enough money to make it that way. So, and you're seeing more and more select service hotels that don't have food and beverage. Yeah. You're also seeing celebrity chef agreements go into hotels and casinos. And I think there was something else. Oh, you're also seeing branded restaurants go into hotels. Right? Didn't Papasitos go into the Hilton downtown at the convention center? Yeah. It's a Papado? Really?
In the convention center.
Oh, and the George R. Brown. Oh, they put one in the George R. Brown. About time. Man, they needed something at the George R. Brown. And a grotto. They do a grotto too? Landry's? Landry's did a grotto. Yeah, well, that's what's happening. There's lots of opportunities. But I've seen those contracts. They're about that thick. I mean, you got to think about a lot of stuff. Especially if you're in a casino property. I mean, you just got a lot going. It's a little easier on just a full-service hotel. But, yeah. That answer that?
I was kind of thinking, like, there's a lot of complaints with Airmark, that they do a lot of contract, like, for instance, everything that's over there, but a lot of people don't like the service that Airmark provides. So I was thinking maybe there's opportunity for management contracts for food and beverage, and those types of examples.
There's-
Like in stadiums or those types of things.
Absolutely. That's already kind of ubiquitous, right? I mean, there's probably 6 or 7 of bigger groups, Compass, Aramark, Sodexo, that operate in those spaces. Festivals, arenas, racetracks, yeah. Universities, prisons, schools, real opportunities there. It's a tough market to break into, but people are always looking for a better program because, as you pointed out, the service typically is not very high. They typically are focused on money rather than service. Airlines, another one. You know, so there's lots of opportunity for sure. Yeah. So that's really, I don't have a whole lot more to add on franchise agreements, just because it's just so difficult. Management contracts. Look, what are the things you would think, if you were going to manage a hotel, what would you want to have in a contract? If you were the management company. Sydney? Indemnification. What does that mean, Sid?
That your other party is stating that if a lawsuit or injury or something comes up, they're not going to come after you for it. So they're indemnifying you from the damages or the payout or.
That's right. So this indemnification term is used frequently in contracts. And you'll also hear the term used as hold harmless. A hold harmless agreement. But a lot of people don't understand what it means. Look, these are very impactful terms. And I don't want you to leave here without knowing what they mean. If Sydney agrees to indemnify me, right? That means that if I get, depending upon the language, if I get sued for something that went on in the hotel, Sydney is agreeing to pay for my attorney's fees and my damages should the lawsuit be successful. She's going to indemnify me, hold me harmless, right? Now, give me one second. Now, here's the problem with indemnification agreements. Sydney's a law student. If I get hit for $2 million, is Sydney going to be able to pay that? No. Yeah. Not now. Next year, after she gets out and practices for a year. Yeah. She's not. So what typically do you want Sydney to have in order to secure her ability to pay? insurance, right? But your insurance company has to know it. They have to consent to that, right? Otherwise, they're not going to pay because they haven't collected enough premium from Sydney to contractually indemnify me. That's a little complicated, but do you guys follow that? Darren? Got it? Yeah, let me do it one more time. So, Sydney is the owner of the hotel. Okay? She owns the company that owns the hotel. I'm the third-party management company. I'll manage the hotel, Sydney, and I'll manage it up to standards. But if we get sued, we'll cover the first $100,000, right? But anything over that, Sydney's company has agreed to indemnify us, hold us harmless. So now, I get sued for $1 million. Somebody slipped and fell on the lobby floor. I get sued for $1 million, and they win $1 million. So I have to pay $1 million. But contractually, now the plaintiff, the person that was injured, they don't care who pays it. They just want the money, right? So my insurance company is going to pay the first $100,000. Who's going to pay the next $900,000? Sydney, right? Assuming she has the money. But if Sydney doesn't have the money, Danny, who has to pay it? Me. Because I'm the one that got sued, right? So she doesn't step in my shoes. She doesn't take my place. She's just agreed to pay if I have to pay, right? And I have to collect it from her. So, 2 lessons here. Number 1, you're not secure just because somebody indemnifies you. So don't think that. And number 2, be very cautious who you indemnify. It could ruin you. I lease my cars. Personal anecdote. An anecdote is a story. All right? I lease my cars. Does everybody understand what that means? So I pay a monthly fee over 3 years and I lease a car. And then I turn it in and that's it. I get another car, right? So I pay a certain amount of money every month as part of my agreement. And it goes through a particular financing company with the dealership. Well, they screwed up the first auto draft payment. And they said, hey, we need to get another one from you. And I said, well, just draft another one. They said, oh, we can't do that. I said, it's 2017. I said, just draft it. I said, well, we can't do that. You have to send us a check. I said, it's 2017. We don't write checks. I said, I'll just give you a credit card, whatever. They said, no, you have to go into our online payment system and do that. I said, sure, walk me through it. So I get online with their supervisor and we walk through it. And she says, first, it's $28. $28 for what? She goes, well, that's the fee we charge to use our online service. I said, hold on, let me make sure I'm clear. I said, you want me to pay you to pay you? I said, I'm just not going to do that. And she said, but you need to pay us. I said, I don't have to pay you anything. I said, we made a deal. In our contract, I never agreed to pay you, and I'm not going to do that. I said, I'll take the money to the dealership. You can get my credit card number right now, but I'm not paying you to pay you. She goes, okay, we'll waive the fee. I said, great. So then we go down, and we get right to the end of the process, and there's and she says, well, we collect our money through Western Union. I said, you want me to wire money through what? This seems very convoluted. I said, well, okay, I'll do it. If that's what it takes to make you guys happy. And she goes, well, you have to sign here that you agree to all the terms and conditions. And I guess nobody reads those things, but I do. And so I read it, and there's a big old fat indemnification agreement in there. Now I'm wiring a couple of $100. And Western Union goes, you're going to indemnify us for anything that might happen, cyber breach, this, that, and the other, worm that comes through your system to ours. And I'm like, not in your lifetime, lady. I'm not going to indemnify you, much less. She goes, well, you have to. I said, show me in the contract where I said I would indemnify a Fortune 500 company in order to pay you. She goes, well, Mr. Barth, it's not in the contract. I said, well, then I'm not doing it. I mean, my goodness. My point is, be careful. These hotels, Laura, when you sign these meeting contracts with these hotels, your wedding folks that come in to get married, everybody, you got to sign here. And there's an indemnification clause in there. If somebody in your wedding party slips and falls, you're going to hold us harmless. You're going to pay if we have to pay. I'm like, what? No. You have to read this stuff. Don't do that. Or at the very least, make it a mutual indemnification clause, right? Let me give you my rules about contract. I never agree to do something that the other side will not agree to do also. If somebody insists on me indemnifying them, but they're not willing to indemnify me, I'm not signing. Period.
I have a question about that. So it's like, is that practical in real life though? Because I'll give you an example. I went on a rafting trip in Colorado and I had to read a contract and it was paid.
Right.
So it's readable, but I read through it at the end, it's like, they pretty much said if there's gross negligence, you are holding us harmless.
Yeah.
Can I scratch?
That's right.
that?
I'm not going to do it.
And the guy made me redo it. He's like, well, then you can't go on the trip.
And that's your choice.
So I'm asking, like, is that?
Right. Well, first of all, here's the thing you got to realize. When we get to that chapter about gross negligence, you're going to find that you can't exculpate yourself from negligence or gross negligence. But yeah, no, well, it's nearly impossible. Today with the court system, maybe, but up until now, most often not. But look, you're exactly right. It's only practical if you're willing to walk away. But unfortunately, they only hand those things to you when you're getting ready to get in the raft, or when you're getting ready to walk into the gym, or you're getting ready to hop on the bike and go for a bike ride, right? And so we're trying to push that out more in front. This is the release you have to sign. But I would not sign, I would sign a release, but I wouldn't sign an indemnification, because I don't think the release would be held up in court. You get the difference? Yeah, okay. I'll make sure everybody understands that. But it's just crucial that you understand what you're signing and what you're agreeing to do. Try not to enter into contracts that the other side won't do what they're asking you to do. Why would you want to do business with somebody like that anyway? I had a lease one time, a big company. And my company at the time was it was small, but we made good money. And the guy goes, well, you need to personally guarantee the lease. I thought, I'll personally guarantee the lease if your president will personally guarantee the lease. And they said, what? And I said, well, yeah. I said, we probably make more money than you guys do. And they said, no. I said, well, then we'll show each other what we do. They said, well, no, we just don't do that. And I said, well, then we're not signing. He goes, no, really? And I go, really? Why would I do something? Why would you ask me to do something that you're not willing to do? What's that about? They were like, really? People do business with you? I said, all the time. I said, there are a lot of people out there that feel the same way I do. But the people take advantage of you. Don't fall for that stuff. Have that rule number one. Make your contracts mutual. You're going to find in this agreement that you read through that it's pretty mutual. Right? We worked really hard to make those general terms and conditions fair and mutual. So I hope you'll look at those. By the way, that document is copyrighted. And you're going to learn what that means here in about a month. Yeah, right. Don't distribute that anywhere, because I will know. This is the first class I've ever given it to, because I think it's worth your while to see it. Amy, I'm sorry. You had a question a long time ago.
You answered it.
I did.
Yes.
What was it about?
You had given an example in the past about like getting in a car accident and trusting someone else to like give you the best lawyer to defend you, kind of thing.
Ah, yeah.
Like, no, don't trust them. Like they only have this cap, kind of thing.
That's right.
And so I was going to put it in the same terms.
Context.
Like,
Okay, so you're good with that. Okay. All right, so management contracts then, you kind of get, there's a lot at stake here. There's a lot of money flowing through the hotel, and those things are negotiated meticulously. But some of the important points of a management agreement are the standards that the hotel is going to be operated at, right? Food cost percentage, occupancy percentage, what are those targets, right? There are a lot of operating ratios out there for hotels and food and beverage, industry operating ratios that you can find to utilize to benchmark performance against. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? Yeah? So I'd go to the National Restaurant Association to find out if that food and beverage, labor cost for food and beverage operation in a hotel. I would go to Smith Travel Research to find out what the RevPAR, revenue per available room, or average daily rate should be in the Galleria area of Houston, Texas, right? And as an owner, I want to stipulate in my contract for the management company that you have to perform at least at this level. Otherwise, I get the right to terminate the agreement early without penalty, right? Other things, the biggest challenge typically is the indemnification agreement. If I'm an owner, I typically want the management company to indemnify me. Why? They're the ones operating. What we learn about liability, it follows control, right? And the management company is actually in control of the hotel, right? And the employees and what's going on there, right? Okay? So typically you would expect them to be held liable, right? But a lot of management companies won't take on the liability. They want the owner to indemnify them. Yeah, their argument is, wait, you own the property. You own the hotel. You're setting the standards. We're operating it on your behalf. So it's a lot of discussion that goes on there. Now, another big issue in these agreements is who owns the employees. Who do the employees actually work for? And you have to stipulate that in the management contracts. Because here's what happens. If Michael and I have an agreement, a management agreement, and Michael gets unhappy with me, and he's the management company, and he figures out that he can walk, is he going to leave his key employees there? He's going to take them with him to his other properties, right? He's invested a lot of time and money in those people, right? But as the owner, I want those people to stay because I need business continuity. Do you see? So I need that. So you've got to specify who these people work for and who gets to go. And typically it ends up compromising around key people. So your line staff, your front of the house people, your housekeepers, your maintenance, your operators, your front desk associates, typically they would remain at the hotel. Your executive suite, executive housekeeper, security director, sales and marketing, right? AGM and GM, typically they will remain with the management company. But not always, right? But that has to be spelled out in the agreement. And then the other big area today is who owns the customer data. Does the management company own it because they're the ones mining it, they're the ones that are creating the relationship, or does the owner of the hotel get that data? Because theoretically, they paid the management company to do the work to find it. So it's kind of a work for hire. So who owns it? How would you settle that?
Or did you pay the licensing fee to use the central?
Well, I use the reservation system, but these are my group sales contacts. I get those customers I can find because they're typically in the affinity programs, right? Frequent traveler. But yeah, the brand's going to own those, the ownership group, maybe the management company. That's an argument. The big argument comes if I've got meeting space and I've got these customers. Who owns those contacts? If I've got, let's say that we have a divorce over our agreement and you're the ownership group now, and you bring a new management company in, they're going to have to start scratch, right? First thing, you've got to honor all the meetings, contracts that I entered into before, right? Second, now, meetings oftentimes are 2, 3, 4 years in advance, yeah? And you've got to keep that pipeline full. So you want to know who the sales and marketing people for that management company were talking to, right? Because you want to bring them on board. But if they leave, are they going to give that information to you? Not unless it's in the contract that they have to. And that's fought over, heartily. That is fought over. Yes, sir, in the back.
Going back to the who owns the employees, is there usually a non-compete agreement as part of the management contract?
Tell me what you're thinking about a non-compete. You're talking about for the management company can't compete in the same area for a certain amount of time?
Right, like if they would leave.
Yes.
or if
Yeah.
they produce employees with them.
Usually done in a radius, right? You cannot work, or you can't work in this city for 5 years, or whatever it is that the court will enforce in that particular state.
So that's usually part of the management.
Typically part of it, yeah. Right? And the contracts are really thick because it's all about privacy and data and who owns the proprietary data, and there's a lot of things that go on in these conversations. And these get negotiated, whereas franchise agreements don't typically, these agreements get negotiated pretty heavily. Depending how strong the management company is, depending how strong the ownership group is. As you can imagine, it can be a challenge. A friend of mine's a lawyer. Sydney, you'll like this. He's been doing this about 25 years. His fee is $800 an hour to negotiate management contracts. And it takes him about 40 hours. What, you want to meet him he'll be at the conference. He'll be speaking at the conference. His name's Cliff Rissman. He's a great guy, and he's a damn good lawyer. Yeah. All right, so you guys see how complex these things can be and how challenging they are. I don't expect you to know every clause, but we're going to go through some here in a minute. But I do want you to understand the fundamentals that we talked about of a contract, what makes something a contract and enforceable, right? You guys should have that down. And you should understand the basic fundamentals we talked about franchise agreements, how the mandatory disclosures, and you should understand that franchise agreements are rarely negotiated, and you should understand some of the major things we just talked about management agreements, right? Employees, proprietary information, yeah? And then you should also remember that we talked about the 4 basic elements of a contract, right? Agreement, consideration, capacity to contract, and for a legal purpose. Okay? All right. Why don't we take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back, and we're going to break them into teams, and we're going to negotiate a meeting contract. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Laura's going to be the referee. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. All right. Somebody remind me to take this off mute when we come back. All right. You guys ready? I guess they're not ready.
Don't forget to unmute. Don't forget to unmute.
I did. Thank you. I did. Thank you. The first time I did it myself, you guys remind me. That's good. So, a couple of things that I want to catch up on before we jump into that negotiation. Irina asked me a question. It prompted me to think about another example of the post problem that you guys had tonight. You know, that question comes up about disclosure, right? Practically, what are you supposed to do with that? And quite frankly, I think the best practice is when the request is made, you disclose it. And you say, look, if you really want me, if that's important to you, you need to understand that I've got to disclose this to my board and I've got to disclose it to your COO. Because they're the authorized person signing on behalf of the company, so I've got to get everybody's consent to do that, and I'm good with that. Or you just, you get your COO to consent to it, or CFO, whatever it is, and I'm good to go. But here's another example. In meeting contracts, as you will see, let's say I'm the meeting planner, and I'm going to host a meeting at Susanna's hotel, and I book 400 rooms. Right? My room block is 400 rooms over 2 nights. Okay? At $300 a night. And I'm an association, and I send the contract to Susanna and I say, here's the thing, charge my folks $300 a night, but I want $20 a night per room back to the association to credit toward food and beverage and whatever else, right? Now, what's Susanna supposed to say about that? Or Susanna, what would you say about that?
It's the same as we saw with Dr. Hines. It's not, I think it's not fair.
And,
Because
yeah.
the $20 are for the hotel, right? So they are not paying for the complete services that
They
they
get-
would get.
Right. Well, who's it not fair to, though?
The hotel, right?
Well, the hotel is probably, but the hotel is okay. Here's the thing, it's an interesting scenario. The hotel is probably going to do it because they want the business. They've got enough contribution margin, right, in their rooms. Everybody understand contribution? Difference between the cost of what it costs them to sell and what they're making on it. That $20 is probably, it's okay for them. So even though it's not fair, they'd probably do it. But who is it also not fair to? But which guess? The members of the association, right? So, is it important that the association members know of that? Yeah, and I think you'll find that's what most hotels have gone to. Say, look, we're happy to rebate $20 to you, but it needs, your membership needs to understand that that's what's happening. Now, oftentimes what the association will say is, to their members, they'll let them know in advance. And they'll say, hey, our negotiation is $20 back for every room night, but please note that we put that toward food and beverage, and that enables us to keep your registration costs for the conference down. Yeah? But not everybody buys that. And some associations won't work with hotels that insist on disclosing that to the membership. Okay? Everybody get that? Yeah, because that stuff's out there. You're going to see a reference in this contract to a rebate to a company called Helms-Briscoe. Helms-Briscoe is a great opportunity for you, for some of you to go to work for. If you want to work on your own and be independent, it's what we call a meeting space procurement company. So what they will do is you tell them the dates you want to hold a conference, you tell them approximately how many rooms you need and how much food and beverage your budget is, and they will then, if it's in Houston, they'll go to 20 different hotels in Houston that fit your parameters. Digitally, they'll send out an RFP. What's an RFP? Request for proposal. And they'll say, I need 400 room nights over these dates, this much food and beverage, this much space. And then the hotels will write back, we can do it for this rate, we'll give you this much discount off your food and beverage, right? And they try to book the meeting. But you don't pay Helms-Briscoe. Who pays Helms-Briscoe? The hotel. The hotel. Helms-Briscoe typically gets 10% off of the rooms and off the food and beverage spend that you make. So you can imagine if it's 400 rooms and say it's $200 a night, that's $80,000 you get 10%, that's $8,000. If you do another 100,000 in food and beverage, that's another $10,000. So you made $18,000 by facilitating a meeting without much risk, right? So it's big business. Multiple $1 million business. The meetings business and conference business is huge. Absolutely huge. $1 trillion business easily. Yeah. So think about that. I want to step back for just a minute and I want to get back to the security inspection document that I sent to you. Did you guys see that? It's on Blackboard. Rose posted it. That's a very intense security inspection document. You can use that if you want to, but again, that's a copyrighted document. We sell those. And so I gave that for you to see and learn from, but please do not distribute that. You understand why? I would be unhappy. Okay? But you are welcome to use it on these inspections, but recognize that that's intense. And some of the people are going to push back on some of those questions because you're not there to do business with them. Now, if they're smart, here, let me tell you the perspective that we created that from. We do a lot of work with business travel managers. I wanted to make sure everybody in here knows what that is, because that's another opportunity for you for a job and a career. That's pretty significant. I'm sorry, I can't read your name. Caroline.
What if the hotel asks for a list of questions before you come?
Send them the document.
That's okay to send?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just make sure the copyright's on it if you're going to send them that one, yeah. They might not want to answer that one, though. And you can tell them, feel free to not answer anything that you're not comfortable with. That's the part I wanted to share with you guys, because it's intense. But the perspective that we created that from is from a business travel manager's perspective. Here's the thing. If you work for Facebook, they have a position called business travel manager or travel management or travel procurement. Procurement means purchase. Yeah. So that position in that company manages all the travel for all the employees of Facebook. So you have to think about that. Yeah, that could be 50,000 people traveling any given day, right? So you've got hotel rooms, airlines, Uber, ground transportation, parking, meals, right? So you have credit card arrangements, you have flight negotiations, hotel room negotiations. So if that sounds exciting to you, that's the business you want to be in. And I'm going to tell you this, I've been trying to get our college to implement that as a part of our curriculum for 15 years, but they don't want to do it. I don't know why, but they don't.
It's really good money.
It's really good money. Those positions pay anywhere from $80,000 to $250,000 a year. You typically get you get holidays, you get great stock benefits, it's a great job. And you guys are well suited to do it because you understand the business. If you'll go out and work 2 or 3 years in a sales office for a hotel or an airline or a town car company or something like that, then go and become a travel manager, oh my goodness. Or do an internship for a third-party travel management company like American Express. They manage travel for companies, right? Of course, they manage travel, but you use our credit card. Right? All Tour is another one. Travel and Transport is another one. These are $500 million companies, and they're dying for people because the people that have been in travel management positions they're getting older and they're retiring, and there's nobody there to take their place because nobody's teaching them how to do it. There's one school in the country that has that curriculum, and it just started last year. It's out in San Diego. Again, I don't charge extra for that kind of thing, but that's good stuff. So why was I telling you that? Because if you're the travel manager for Facebook, I really don't know why I was telling you that. Why was I telling you that? Facebook, travel management, they're negotiating with you what?
Security.
Oh, right. From the perspective, the security doc, thank you. We created the security document from that perspective. In other words, look, if I'm the Facebook travel manager, don't I need to check your hotel out before I let you stay there? Yeah, because I have a responsibility to my employees to keep them safe when they travel on behalf of the business, right? It's called their duty of care. Yeah, we'll learn more about that in chapter 9 or 10. So, but the travel manager doesn't understand the hotel business. They don't know what to ask. Yeah? And so we created this document so they could have something to ask and get response from the individual hotel. Because today, if Facebook sends it to, let's say, Marriott, does Marriott own all of their hotels? No, they're not going to respond on behalf of 2,500 franchisees, right? They're going to have to send it out. So it's very convoluted and complex. So we created this document to help the travel manager get answers to the questions that they need. And that's why it's pretty complex and pretty intensive. So what I want you guys to realize is the one in the book is good, and they'll typically walk through all of that with you, right? But the one that I sent you, I just wanted you to see how deep it can go. They might push back on some of those questions. Let them push back. And you don't push back on them. Just take what you can get. All right? If they're smart, and you can tell them this, you can say, hey, I realize this is pretty intense, but this is from the perspective of a business travel manager, and we thought you might want to do a pre-inspection before they ask you this themselves. That's kind of the way to sell it to them. Does that help? Carolyn? Yep.
Yes.
That helps. Okay. All right. So I wanted to get that across. All right. Now, and you guys remember, we're not in class next week. I've given you another class off to help you continue to do this. Everybody's got that down on your calendar? All right, good. Any of you get caught up in that wicked storm on, was it Tuesday? Anybody get caught driving in that? The tornadoes down south? Woo! That was tough. Yeah. You guys be careful. Let me put it to you this way. If there's ever tornadoes, we're not having class. I'll send you a note.
Even if tornadoes in the morning and classes in the evening?
No, thank you. I like the way you think. You should be in grad school. That's good thinking. No. If the tornado's around the time people are coming to class, don't feel like you need to drive to class, right? All right. Good question. All right. Everybody has the meeting contract, or you can access it on your mobile device. All right. Now, here's what happens with these contracts. When I first started looking at these, I would get a contract that was 50 pages long. And it was totally disorganized. So what we did was we took what I consider to be variable clauses, clauses that actually need to get negotiated each time. And then I took all the clauses that essentially remain the same, contract to contract, and I put them in an addendum. So if you look at the agreement, can I see that real quick? If you look at the agreement, you'll see that the first 5 pages are things that need to be negotiated. The clauses in those 5, not all 5 pages. There's only about 5 things that need to be negotiated, and I'll walk through those with you. But when you turn after that, and you get to the general terms and conditions, those things, if you go ahead and make them mutual, they're going to basically stay the same every contract you ever do. A couple of things might change, like venue, jurisdiction, and I'll talk to you about that. But for the most part, we took the pain out of the contract. Okay? Do you see where that is? It's the last 3 pages. Yeah, called the general terms and conditions. All right. So, if you look at the first 5 pages, what is it that we need to negotiate on a meetings contract? Where do you start? Yeah, I've kind of highlighted it for you. Yeah, so the room block. So what does a room block mean?
The number of rooms that's outside for whatever you're reading.
Okay, now, the hotel is relying on what?
People bring the rooms.
My promise to fill those rooms, right? Is that consideration? Yeah, because they're relying upon my promise to their detriment, because they're taking those rooms out of their sales inventory. They're showing those as sold, right? That's very important. They're showing those as sold. Now, but from the meeting planner's value proposition to the hotel perspective, does everybody see what I mean on the room block? Look at the table of contents. See the reservation method, but you see the room block is in that chart right there, item A. Does everybody see that? Okay, we're going to block singles, staff rooms. Typically we get a better rate if it's our meeting staff. Typically, we get $99, $129. If the room rate's $179, we'll get $50 or $100 off for staff. And you only get about 4 or 5 staff rooms per night, typically. It depends on how big your conference is. I mean, if you're doing 8,000 rooms, well, then you get more staff rooms. Okay, so, but it's important to recognize that the hotel is taking those rooms out of inventory. All right, where are my revenue managers? Who knows about revenue management? When if I've got a 300-room hotel, and I take 100 rooms out as sold, what can I do with my room rate? It goes up, right? So hotel people hate it when I negotiate with them, because I'm like, because they'll say, well, wait, I'm not giving you this discount. I'm like, dude, we're raising your rate probably 40% overnight. Come on, this is pretty simple to do, right? But so don't lose sight of the value that hosting a conference brings to a hotel, right? Okay. Now, so you agree to take so many rooms. Now, the room block is typically for 100, let's say 100, make our math easy, right? I'm going to take 100 rooms on Friday night and 100 rooms on Saturday night. So my room block is 200 rooms, right? But the industry practice is to typically give us, I'm going to use a term here that's widely misused in the industry. They're going to say attrition. What does attrition mean? Shortfall. Attrition means if I guaranteed 100 rooms and I only took 70, I fell short of my commitment by 30 rooms. I had 30 room attrition. I fell short by 30 rooms. You understand that? Okay. So what they're really saying, so what the hotel industry will do is they'll say, hey, we're going to block 100, but you're only really responsible for 80. In other words, they say we're going to give you 20% attrition. What they really should say, and what we say in our contract, is allowable attrition. We're going to allow a shortfall of 20%, just because we're nice. Yeah, and they are. Then that's a nice benefit, right? I don't have to pick up all 100 rooms. If I pick up 80, I don't owe the hotel for the other 20 rooms. Right? And that's a big deal. If you're talking about 1,000 rooms, and you only pick up 800, 200 rooms at $200, $40,000 you'd owe the hotel if you didn't have the allowable attrition. Does everybody see that? All right, so it's important. Now hotels are starting to negotiate that allowable attrition number. Sometimes it's 20%, sometimes it's 10%. When they push me 10%, I ask for 30%. Right? Now you gotta realize you're guaranteeing these hotel rooms. You gotta pay if you don't use them. We'll get to that in a minute, but there's a lot to these contracts. All right, so you'll notice that there's placement fee rebate for Helms-Briscoe that I told you about, right? That needs to be disclosed. Does everybody see that? The highlighted part, right under the room chart.
What about for every 50 rooms you book, you get?
Hold on, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I assume that's on there.
That's on there. Those are called concessions.
Right.
What the hotel can grants you some additional benefits. We'll get to those in a minute.
So that doesn't need to be disclosed?
Yes, has to be in the contract. Oh, but is it disclosed to the group? Typically not. Typically we don't insist on concessions being disclosed. Rebates, typically, if it's an association. But if you're just a meeting planner, Laura, and you're inviting and you're trying to attract people to come stay at the hotel, and you're going to get a rebate off the price and they don't belong to your association, I don't see there's any reason to disclose that to them. That's just part of the deal you're making with the hotel, because you're guaranteeing it. So then I want to move this relatively quickly. You'll see that there's how do they make reservations. You want to make sure that you get credit. Whoever is coming for your event, staying at the hotel, you want to make sure that they're in your room block. Because if they book outside your room block and you don't get credit for it and you don't meet your guarantee, you're going to have to pay. right? So the reservation method is very important, and you want to make sure the hotel does that right. And often, you'll reserve the right to audit the hotel when it's all over to make sure that and what you do by audit is you send them a list of all of your attendees, and they'll check that against their reservations list and see if there are any other people that were booked outside the block, right? You need credit for that block. All right, so you'll notice function space. If you're going to block rooms, the hotels, if you're going to use their function space for a banquet or a wedding, they want you to buy hotel rooms too. They'll usually give you the function space if you book enough rooms or you spend enough money on food and beverage. But here's the way it'll be. We'll give you the space if you spend $25,000 in food and beverage. But if you don't spend the $25,000, then you owe us $3,000 for the space. Right? And oh, by the way, we'll give you 80% allowable, 20% allowable attrition on the food and beverage. Right? And we'll get back to that in a minute. All right, so you see all of that, and then if you'll scroll down to the bottom of the next page, you'll see amenities to be provided by hotel. These are the concessions, Laura. So they're highlighted there for you. Complimentary meeting room rental. Now, in this particular contract, it's not tied to our food and beverage spend. We're just saying if you want us to buy all these guest rooms from you, you're going to give us the space. Second, complimentary high-speed wireless internet in all the guest rooms. We don't want our guests to pay this rate and then also have to pay to use the internet, right? Complimentary high-speed wireless internet in the meeting space. Our people, today, everybody uses the internet. They use the cloud for their meetings, auto response systems, social. People need access to Wi-Fi. And a lot of hotels will charge $40 for people to access it. And you want to piss your meeting delegates off? Make them have to pay to access Wi-Fi in your meeting that they've paid you to come to. 10% discount on all food and beverage costs. One complimentary room for every 40 rooms picked up on a cumulative basis. So look, so if we book 200 room nights, we pick up all 200, we're going to end up with 5 free rooms. Right? Now we can do whatever we want with those rooms. We can sell them and get the money, right? They'll give us the money. You know, if somebody stays there and pays the rate, we can get the money put toward our food and beverage, or we'll use it for our staff rooms, or we'll put VIPs there.
What does the cumulative basis mean? Like at one time, like you can't like put 40.
Exactly. Yeah. No. But no. As the total, I think what we intended there is the total. In other words, we're not doing it night by night. We're going to look at the entire aggregated sales of rooms to get it. So a lot of times they'll say per night. And we do it cumulatively because sometimes we'll do 140 rooms one night and we'll only do 30 rooms another night. So we don't want, if we do 30, we don't get a room. But if we do 170 total, right, we get the 4 rooms. Yeah. And then complimentary self-parking. Parking's a big deal. You book a space in San Francisco, they're going to pay $45 a night to park. And they're not going to give you complimentary parking there. Houston, you can argue for complimentary parking. But in some cities, Manhattan, Chicago, you're not going to get it. 10% discount on cost for attendees in the hotel, salon, and spa. We just try to do some value adds, right, for the delegates and give them a little more value when they come. And it's good for the hotel too. We try to market it. And oftentimes they'll put in a free appetizer at their in-house restaurant for the delegates to come. So to try to entice them to spend money in their restaurants, or first free drink is free. All right. Master account. The delegates at our conferences, they pay for their own rooms. So the only thing that goes on the master account is our master food and beverage spend in our staff rooms, our audio-visual expenses and things like that. If you're a company like Deloitte and you're bringing 1,000 people in for a meeting, typically all of those room charges will go on the master account. Deloitte got so fed up with meeting contracts, they built their own conference center.
Yeah,
It's in Dallas. Spectacular.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. They just got tired of this. They said, well, we'll just build our own. And that's what they did. Yeah, Deloitte University. That's exactly what it is. Okay, so you see the allowable attrition clause, right? And then you'll see under there, you'll see that we've set out a formula to illustrate what the cost would be if we don't pick up all the rooms, right? So let's look at the room night commitment, which is 200 rooms. No. Oh, good. Which is oh, and look at that. It fell under there. Oh, okay. The room night commitment, which is 200 rooms, right? You see that? At the room rate, let's say it's $100, so that's $20,000, right? That's what we've guaranteed to the hotel. But the hotel, we're going to multiply that by 80%, because the hotel gave us 20% allowable attrition, right? So if we don't pick up any rooms, our commitment was 200 times 80% or less 20%. So that's 20 that we'd only owe 16,000, right? That's what it was. Now, equals times 85%. Why 85%? I give you a hint in that parenthetical. Right? That's the contribution margin. It costs the hotel maybe $25, $30 to get a room ready by the time they pay housekeepers, put the amenities and supplies, wear and tear, things like that, right? And so we always argue that, well, we're not picking up the room, so we shouldn't pay you for that cost, right? So that's how we put it. But we also then, and hotels hate this, we also insist that we get credit for any room sold by the hotel toward our room block, right, that we didn't pick up. Now, hotels will argue, oh, no, we'll give you credit for last room sold. In other words, if it's 300 rooms and we picked up 100, right, we guarantee on Friday night, we guaranteed 100, and they have 300 total, and we don't pick up our 100, we tell them right up front we're not going to do it, and so they sell some other rooms as we go on. Our position is every room you sell goes toward our guarantee. They're going to say, no. Last room sold. In other words, the last 100 rooms that we sell will go to you. So that 100 in the middle, or the first 200 we sell, that comes to us. Since you were only responsible for 100, we'll give you credit once we get into that 100. And then I'll say, you know what? I think that sounds relatively reasonable, except for this. Once you reach your average occupancy rate, right, for the last 3 years over these dates, then we don't owe you any money. And they'll go, what? And I'll go, right. Why would we pay you? Because you're going to make your average occupancy anyway, right? That's what you're going to do. That's fair. They don't see it that way, but that's fair. Anyway, so a lot of back and forth that goes on, right? But you just got to really understand the business to know how to negotiate these agreements and what the hotel typically has done traditionally versus what you can do when you're negotiating with the hotel. You have to remember, the hotel needs your business. They need meetings. These full-service hotels that are big, what we call the big boxes, they need you to participate with them. They need meetings. But listen, not every meeting planner understands this stuff. So sometimes it's easier to negotiate with somebody that doesn't understand it, right? So sometimes it's not. Who asked me if it was practical? Oh, Sydney did. Yeah. Sometimes you have to, they'll walk away from you if you get too hard on it. All right. All right, so that's that. I want to, then here's the other thing. Cancellation by the group. Now, do you remember we talked about liquidated damages? Liquidated damages are supposed to be reserved. Liquidated damages are an amount stipulated in a contract that if somebody breaches the contract, this is how much they're going to pay. but they're supposed to be reserved for when damages are difficult to ascertain, right? Like economic damages projected over time. Percentages of royalty payments that would be earned by performance, right? Things that would be difficult to predict and project from a present value, right? But 100 hotel rooms at $150 a night, that's pretty darn easy to calculate. I can do that on my abacus. Right? And so, but the hotel industry has decided that we're going to call them liquidated damages so that they can collect them, and then they collect them, they collect your liquidated damages, and then what do they do with those hotel rooms? Then they sell them. It's exactly what we talked about with the reservation agreement, just on a micro scale. This is more macro. Instead of 1 or 2 or 10 hotel rooms that don't show, this is 200 hotel rooms that don't show. Right? And they cancel. So the hotel says, but wait, we're going to let you walk away 121 days out. You don't have to pay us anything. That's very nice, because the hotel is saying, they're taking the risk that we'll be able to resell the rooms. Now that's a good deal, right? So 6 months out, or 121 days is 4 months out. 4 months out, you don't have to pay us. But when you get into 120 to 91, then you got to pay us 40% of the total, right? And then if you get closer, it goes up, right? 90 to 60 days, and you keep going. 59 to 30, and then 29 days. Within the last 30 days, it's 100%, plus 30% of the food and beverage minimum. Chef, why 30%? Why only 30% of the food and beverage minimum? My food and beverage boys in the back. Why only 30%? Food and beverage. Yeah. You remember on the rooms, we're only going to pay them 85% of the cost, because that's their profit margin. Yeah. Food and beverage profit margin is probably not 30%, but in a hotel maybe, right? So they don't have to buy the food, they don't have to prep the food, so they were anticipating the revenue, so we're going to give them what they would have earned, right, had we executed the agreement. Yeah? Now, a fundamental principle of a contract that you always want to follow is that one party to the contract if one party breaches or has to cancel, the non-breaching party should never be allowed to make more money on the contract than they would have had the contract been executed. Right? So why should the hotel collect liquidated damages and then be allowed to sell the rooms again? Well, the hotel argues that, well, we're letting you off easy, you're paying us this amount of money, and we're going to cut you loose. So you no longer have the risk of us not selling any of your rooms out, right? Is there some consideration there? Arguably. But and you'll notice in here, and oftentimes before we drafted our own contract, there was never even a clause in here for cancellation by the hotel. Do hotels cancel contracts? Absolutely. Well, if you're going to charge me to cancel, then I'm going to charge you to cancel. Remember what I talked about being mutual? All right. Because look, if the hotel sells, here's what happens. I book a room with Michael. I book 200 rooms at $150 a night and $50,000 of food and beverage over a weekend. Well, then Irina comes along and says to Michael, hey, Michael, I'll take all of your guest rooms and I'll pay you $250 a night and we'll spend $150,000. Well, what's Michael going to do? He's going to do what to me? He's going to cancel me, right? But I'm going to make him think about it. And then you've got insurance, and then we've got the signature line and general terms and conditions. Let's get back to the cancellation just for a moment. I think there's a credit clause in here somewhere. See, look at B. Go up to the very top and go down to paragraph B, reservations after cutoff date. So here's what happens. You make the room block, and let's say your conference is scheduled for March 1st. Well, the hotel wants a cutoff date at your room rate, because they're usually giving you a better room rate than you can find, right? That they're typically selling their rooms at because you're buying so many, right? And so they're going to say, well, look, 15 days before the conference, everybody has to be reserved at that rate, which allows us to take advantage of the rooms we have left and to sell them at a higher rate, right? From that point forward, anybody else that comes on has to pay the going rate at the hotel. Do you see? Right. But, so what we say is, well, after that date, the hotel may offer unused rooms to other customers to reduce its potential losses and group's obligation right commitment. But the hotel will still accept reservations from our folks and continue to offer the group rate to those attendees until the hotel achieves 95% occupancy, which is rare. They got to get pretty close to selling out before our folks have to pay a higher rate. Do you see? And then, further, all individual room nights, this is the piece de resistance. In other words, this is the good thing. All individual room nights from any reservations made and accepted by the hotel after the cutoff date will be applied towards our room night commitment. All individual room nights, any individual room night, right? After that, comes toward our room night commitment. Okay?
Is this a common clause to have? Because from my experience, they don't have the ability to continue booking at the block rate.
Yeah, no, this is very uncommon. Yeah. That's why you go to a lawyer. That's why you hire Sydney. Sydney's going to give everybody her card when we walk out the door the last day of class. Yeah. Yeah. But it took a while. But here's what you got to understand. Hotels, for the longest time, nobody ever pushed back. There's only really one other lawyer in the country that looks at it from the meeting planner's perspective. I just got into it because I started putting on conferences. It took me about 3 years to figure this out. I'm like, what? No. And I'd say to these sales and marketing people, this is what we're going to do. And they'd say, what? No. It took us a while. But here's what would happen. The contracts were so one-sided, they were so onerous, that they would say, let's say a Marriott hotel would send it to Exxon. And the Exxon attorney would spend 10 hours carving up the contract. And then they'd send it back. And this was happening with every single meeting that was going on. What a ridiculous waste of time and energy, right? And oftentimes, at one time I know of, a big Fortune 500 company sent a bill to the hotel for their legal team's time in reviewing the contract because it was so onerous in the beginning. Why would you ever send such a one-sided contract to somebody? You're trying to do business with these people. You want them to be successful, right? At least that's my attitude. And one time, if you send two owners to contract today to some company like Exxon or Shell, and you're dying for their business, why would you do that, right? They're going to send you their contract. And they're going to go, dude, if that's how you want to play, you sign this if you want to. And I promise you, that happens a lot today. Hotels have really shot themselves in the foot a lot by trying to double dip. I call it double dipping, by collecting liquidated damages and then reselling the rooms and getting. So in other words, if you do that, then they're getting much more than they would have had the contract been fully executed, right? And that's the way you start negotiations on these agreements. You say, look, we follow the Convention Industry Council core values. And number one core value is neither party to a contract will earn more money on that contract if the contract is breached than they would have had the contract been fully executed. And that's fair, and that's reasonable, and that's mutual. Hotels depend on you, you depend upon hotels. Stop trying to screw each other. Right? You're partners. You should act like partners. The hotel should help you be successful. You should help the hotel be successful. Right, Laura? Exactly. See? Meeting of the mind. All right. So, what time is it? That went longer than I thought. Oh, yeah, you guys will do it. What's the matter? I do something wrong? You guys used to getting out of here early? I don't know. All right. You have your teams, right? How many teams do we have? Are you, yo, you don't have to just yet, but I want you to. You don't have to do your regular teams. I just want you to get into teams of 2. Let's just get in teams of 2. So can you guys do that? Do it right now. Get in teams 2. Yeah. Rachel, you need to. You guys here? Okay. You guys see? You guys good? You guys good? You guys good? You guys good? I need an extra. I need one extra. Rachel? Okay, Susanna's over there. Okay, you come over here. All right, that's good. Everybody's got teams of 2. Now, yeah. Okay. What I want you to do now, though, is I want you to face off with another team. So pull your chairs around and face off with another team. I think we're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think I'm going to be just right. Yeah, you guys square off. You guys square up. You guys square off. You guys square off. You guys square off. You guys, you 2, you come over here.
Oh, that was Carlos.
Susanna and Danny? Okay, you go. No, all right, wait. Who are you going? No. Yeah, you guys go there. You guys go there. You guys go there. You guys go over here with these 2. No, with Amy and these 2. All right. You guys go there. You guys go right between each other. Yeah. Danny, you're good. You're good. Yeah. Yeah. You guys good? Okay, now, here's what I want you to do. Look, like I said, the first 5 pages are variable clauses, right? The things you have to negotiate, for the most part. I want you to negotiate a room block, the allowable attrition, liquidated damages, right? Food and beverage guarantee, and allowable attrition on food and beverage. Okay? That's what I want you to do. And then we're going to talk about 2 or 3 other paragraphs, and we're going to call it a night. But I'm going to give you 15 minutes to do that. Jessica? I sure can. Your room block, so the number of rooms, your allowable attrition for the rooms, your cancellation clause. Don't worry about the hotel cancellation clause on this one. Your food and beverage guarantee and the allowable attrition on your food and beverage guarantee. Okay? I'll tell you, let's go ahead and negotiate one other thing. I want you to negotiate venue. Venue and jurisdiction. So venue and jurisdiction are 2 paragraphs in the mutual clauses. Venue means where is the case, where will it be held, where will the trial occur, right? Houston, New York, Montana, Switzerland. And jurisdiction means which laws will apply. See if you can figure that out. In other words, if you're in Texas and they're in New York, right? Marriott's in Washington, D.C. Where do you think they want all venue to be? Washington, D.C., because that's where they are, that's where their attorneys are, that's where their witnesses are. They know the judges there, they're in court there a lot. If you're in Houston, where do you want venue to be? Houston, for the same reasons. So you see if you can figure that one out. Liquidated damages under the cancellation clause. Yeah, just what would those be? What percentage would that be? Are you guys good? Everybody good? Okay. 15 minutes, so you got to move pretty quickly. Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. How many rooms did you end up with? 200? Anybody go big? 400 rooms? How many rooms? 400?
On peak.
Okay. You gotta realize that sometimes these contracts become extraordinarily complicated because you could do a citywide, like when the Super Bowl comes to town, right? And the NFL needs 40,000 hotel rooms, right? So every hotel has to participate. So that's when the Convention and Visitors Bureau gets involved in negotiating on behalf, and they'll send out the RFP and they say, this is the rate, and we've negotiated that. If you want to participate, you got to opt in. It can get really complicated. So just hang on to your hats when that happens. All right. So you got a room number, right? All's good there. All right. What about your allowable attrition? Everybody do 20%, or do we have a different? 10%? You got 15. You compromise on 15. Okay. All right. Good. Everybody else 20? Susanna, Rachel, you guys are 20? 30%. 30% allowable attrition? I like that. All right. And what's your room rate? Did you do a room rate? 150? 150? 300, man. Nice room. Nice hotel. What'd you guys do? 180. It's a good number. What'd you guys do? Did you guys do a room rate? Amy? No, you didn't? It's okay.
I don't think we did.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure I asked to do that, but I just did. Yeah, all right. Now, did anybody do a rebate? I didn't ask you to do that. I'm just curious if anybody did a rebate. All right. I'd have thought at the $300 level, I'd have gotten a rebate. All right. Now, what about the food and beverage? How much did you ask for? 30,000 in F&B spend. How many rooms? 30,000. Well, it depends, but what's your room rate? 150? No, it's probably going to be about right. Plus tax and gratuity, right? Remember, your food and beverage minimum, usually it's plus plus. It's service charge plus tax. Service charge today is 21%. 22, 23, 24%. Yeah. I don't pay more than 21. I have a hard time paying 21.
So does beverage include like alcoholic and non-alcoholic?
Yes.
So would it, like, was this best if the company doesn't want to pay for employees alcohol?
Yeah.
Or like they buy your own if you want it?
Yeah.
So like how would you, I guess, would you kind of tie the non-alcoholic with food or?
No, what you'd want to do is you'd say any alcohol purchased by any attendee, right, on their account would count toward the minimum, although that's kind of tough. Typically, it's just food and beverage billed to the master account that counts.
Yeah.
Does that help? Yeah. Okay. And then what about allowable attrition on the food and beverage? 30?
40.
Your allowable attrition, 30%? 40%? What happened to my 80%? Or 70%? No? Nobody went that far? All right. All right. So, after you kind of walked through these, do you kind of understand those variable clauses better now and what they require, right? And what they're asking you for, right? And so really, once you kind of understand those, you really understand meeting contracts. Those are the things you really have to think about. And then the last piece, of course, is cancellation. Now, cancellation is different than attrition, than excess attrition, right? So if I hold the meeting and you've given me 20% allowable attrition, but I only pick up 60%, I'm 20% short, right? I got to make those up. Yeah? Unless I get credit somewhere else, right? Now you'll also notice in our contract that if we spend more money on food and beverage than the minimum, but we're short on our rooms, our food and beverage overage counts against our room shortage, and vice versa, right? Because really, if you think about it, it shouldn't just be room nights. It should be total revenue.
Right.
And I'm just trying to make the hotel whole with the money, right? They shouldn't care where it comes from.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I didn't understand here
Uh-huh.
is when they prepare 5% of the plates that the...
In excess?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Then they are charging the 10% per person for each person if they didn't attend? Like...
10%. Wait, where is
If
it?
they did the 5%,
let me just see. They charge an extra, they prepare 5% above. Right? Let's see. Hotel will be prepared to serve 5% above the guaranteed attendance, but not exceed 50 meals the overage. In the event the hotel serves 10% in excess of the guaranteed group name, we shall pay a surcharge of 10% of the per person charge for each person served at the event in excess of the total of the guarantee. I have no idea what that says. In the event the guaranteed attendance increases, may only increase the hotel's approval following the time guaranteed attendance was due. The 5% overage will no longer apply. I have no idea. I got to think about what we were trying to say there. Hotel will be prepared to serve 5% of the guaranteed attendance. Well, okay, so the first piece is they're going to serve, if we order 100 lunches, they're going to be prepared to serve 105. Okay, no problem there, right? But not to exceed 50 meals, right? So in other words, if we were doing 100, 200, well, 500, they would be prepared to serve 25, right? But they're never going to serve more than 50 regardless, right? They're not going to be prepared to do that. So we have to give a guarantee, right? And so they're going to be prepared to do 5% above whatever our guarantee is, but not to exceed 50. All right. So the hotel serves 10% in excess of the guaranteed attendance. So in other words, if we do 100 and they serve more than 10 extra meals, right, we'll pay a surcharge of 10%, the per person charge. So we're going to pay the cost of the meal plus 10% additional if it's more than 10. Because the hotel's going to have to do some different things and they're not prepared for it, so it's kind of a penalty for us for not giving them the right guarantee. That's what we said. But I need to rework that paragraph. Thanks for showing me that. Nobody in their right mind would understand that. Or maybe their left mind. All right, so cancellation clause, liquidated damages, you saw that. Did you guys kind of go with what's in the contract? No. You guys did? Okay. Who kind of had something different? What did you guys go for? Everybody understands liquidated damages, though, and how that works? Okay. A stipulated amount of money. What'd you go with?
We gave 2 months for no cost, 1 month at 70, and below 31 days at 100%.
Okay, that's reasonable. Yeah, it depends on where they're located and if they have the rebooking cycle that they can book the rooms, right? Sometimes you can get that. And it also depends on when you come in to book. If you come in late to book, sometimes it'll have to be that short window, right? And you can negotiate a little better that way. Because if a hotel has a space 90 days out, they desperately need your meeting. So you can really negotiate much better. See that? All right. All right, look, there's really one other, how about venue and jurisdiction? Here in Houston, because you guys decided you were all here in Houston? That's how everybody did? That's so bad. You know what this reminds me of? I told my leadership class one year, I said, the most commonly misspelled word in that class, and I have them write a lot, is the word manager. They always spell it manger, M-A-N-G-E-R, and they use spell check, and spell check thinks manger is a word, right? Spell check is not artificial intelligence. They don't understand context, right? The spell check doesn't. So they misspell it. So I said at the beginning of the semester, I said, here's the deal. If nobody misspells manager, and they would have to write 3 papers. If nobody misspells it the entire semester, I'm going to add 3 points to everybody's final grade. And they were like, really? Yeah. And you know what they did? They all got together and agreed they'd never use the word in any of the papers.
That's funny.
Oh yeah, it was hysterical. That's what they did.
That's leadership.
I don't know, but they used the word leader. They used anything. They did everything they could do. The other word that they mess up all the time is restaurateur, because most people spell it restaurant-tour, but there's no N in restaurateur, right? So they screw that up as well. Yeah, well, there's that too. But I like positive incentives, but I thought that was pretty damn creative, as many of you did too. All right, so you guys all did venue in Houston, and so everybody was here. But you guys see where that can be a challenge.
Right.
And it's really a problem, especially with international contracts. And so you've got to be cognizant. I just want you to know what those are. The last clause I want you to know about is, it's called an integration clause, or also known as a full agreement clause, or entire agreement clause. Can somebody find that in the... Oh, did I? Shoo, yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, a little late for the oops. So it's in the general terms and conditions. And look, if you didn't get a chance to read through these, I hope you do, because it can really learn a lot. It's the number 3, the entire agreement. This agreement constitutes the entire agreement between the parties and supersedes. In other words, it's the agreement that matters. No other agreements or revisions or versions that we did before matter. This is the one that matters, the one that's signed. Okay? And here's what it is. And supersedes all previous negotiation commitments and writings. This agreement will not be changed or modified in any manner except by an instrument in writing signed by... So, here's the point. If Leah and I were negotiating, and I said, hey, Leah, I want to make sure we're clear that I know the agreement says 20% allowable attrition, but we've agreed to 35%. And Aaliyah says, totally, I've got your back, don't worry about it, we'll pick that up, later with an email memorandum or something. And I go, okay, that sounds great, because we got to get it signed, we're in a hurry. And then I do it, and then Leah, number one, her memory's a little fuzzy, and she goes, I never said that. And I'm like, but Leah, I got this email that says this is what we're going to do, and you confirmed. You said, sorry, dude, don't know where that came from. We got a contract. It's in the contract, right? Or here's what really happens. Leah leaves the company. And now we go back, and I go, hey, I need that 35% attrition. And they're like, no way, it's 20. And I said, no, we had a deal. They say, look at that entire agreement clause, because that's what counts. In other words, the only thing that matters, what the law says, Sydney, what do we call that? The 4 corners of the agreement. Whatever's in the agreement is what matters. If you have a verbal thing or some extrinsic writing or an email that describing something else, it does not count. And you cannot rely upon that. Okay? Jessica, you got that? All right, good. Hey, guys, it's been a good night. You guys learn a lot?
Yeah.
All right, good. Hey, don't forget. Now, we're going to take off next week. But then we're back on chapter 6, right? No post next week. Be the week after. You guys take your time, focus on your inspections. If you have trouble, let me know. All good? All right, hey, be safe. Don't drink and drive. Don't text and drive. Don't ever get drunk and text. You'll regret doing that if you do. Hey, walk out with somebody, please, or what you're used to. Walk out with somebody.